Hi, I'm Cher Kaufmann. I normally do a little bit from the drawing desk, but today I'm going to do a little Q&A on the solvents. So here are the three solvents that have the most questions about them. There's Gamsol, baby oil, and Vaseline. Now, if you watched my other tutorials, you know that the two that I recommend you play with if you're going to be moving into solvents are, first start with a alcohol-based blender pen. That's the first way to start with your colored pencils with solvents. It's a controlled way of working with that. It comes in a pen. You don't have to get anything dirty, and you can play with that, and you can watch my 12 blending tips to see how that works. The second thing that I like for people to experiment with if they're going to be moving into a solvent is the odorless mineral spirits. This one that I'm showing you here happens to be Gamsol. I recommend that you put a little bit of Gamsol in another container so that this stays contaminant free. I keep mine in a little old baby food jar with a little bit of cotton balls, and then I can just dip into that as needed. And then I can just apply that to where I need. And then I don't have this issue with spilling or anything like that. And you can also see that in the 12 blending tips. But what I like about the Gamsol is that it is somewhat controlled in that it evaporates very, very quickly. It may soak into the paper, but I don't have any problems with it leaving any residual damage to what I have colored or what I have drawn. When you move into the different kinds of oils, the different kinds of bases that way, you can get amazing results, but I do want you to know that they work differently. These are completely different tools. So what I suggest then is if you're going to be moving into something along those lines, maybe to play with a little bit of the petroleum jelly. The Vaseline can be somewhat controlled if you put a little bit on the tip of your pencil. You can also see an example of that in the 12 blending tips. And that is something that allows the colors of your colored pencils to kind of intensify. It kind of creates this melting of the wax directly onto the pencil. And so when you apply it onto the paper, there's a lot more that comes down very quickly, but it's very controlled that way. The last thing that I ask for beginners to please consider is baby oil should not be on the ones that you start with. This is just my personal teaching suggestion. You, of course, have total control of what you want to do, but what I have found is that people that are just learning how to work with their colored pencils, learning on how much they're gripping their pens or how much pressure to put on the paper, that kind of control has not yet been developed. And so adding something like baby oil is a bigger risk, because what happens is that a lot of times beginners don't use enough caution when it comes to baby oil, and they apply too much. And so what happens is that I have literally seen people spend many amazing hours on their work and then try to use the solvent to blend it with baby oil, use a Q-tip, and it is just soaked too much with the oil. They go to apply it to their paper, and what happens is that it saturates the paper and then leaves an actual oil ring around their work rather than being the solvent to dissolve and to blend things. It is now a huge focus of the work because the paper has absorbed so much that it's just a grease mark. It is not worth doing that in the beginning. That is something that you can certainly play with as you become a little bit more in tune with how your body works with the relationship between pen and paper. Then you can go play with that. But I don't suggest baby oil to be one of the first things that you play with. It's just not as easy to control for most people that are learning their sense of the relationships with all of that. Now, that being said, if you are the kind of person that likes to get a little creative, maybe doesn't have these things, maybe you don't have access to Gamsol, maybe you don't have Vaseline, maybe you have some chapstick. You can play with that. Chapstick is just like the way the petroleum jelly works for the Vaseline purposes. Do keep in mind that if you happen to have some of those little chapsticks or glosses that go on your lips that are colored, you may have a little bit of that color on all of your paper. So you want to be very mindful of how much you use. But if you happen to have a clear chapstick, you can do the same thing that you would do with the Vaseline or the petroleum jelly, and you could just put your pencil just a little bit. Now, I wouldn't use that on your lips anymore. I'd say it's pretty much a done deal. It's now art supplies, but it is certainly something that you could use. The other thing that I have heard people use is some of the oils from their kitchen. Just be mindful. Again, this kind of falls into the category of the way baby oil works, is that this is a liquid oil. But I have heard people say that they use coconut oil, especially if it's more of a solid state, then it falls more into where you're putting a little bit on your pencil, but just know that when it heats up, or if you're working in a warm area, that that liquid form is going to be a little bit harder to control. But I have heard people say that they use coconut oil and almond oil, and I think someone even used olive oil from their kitchen, but I have not experimented with those. I absolutely believe that they could work. However, I don't think that that's necessarily something for a beginner, maybe something that's a little more advanced that wants to play with those things. Now, that being said, I've always said for all of my videos, use what you have. If that's all you have, and if you're curious, please go very, very slowly. Use very, very little bit, less than you think you need. Always use less than you think you need, because it's much better to be able to add a little bit more. You can't take it away. You can try to blot it, but once it's absorbed into the fibers of your paper, it's pretty much a done deal, and oil just has a way of going into the paper that way. So I want you to be very cautious, very careful, but I want you to be creative. So if you have a chance to go to the art supply store, get some Gamsol, get one of the alcohol blenders that are in the pen or the markers. Try it with some really inexpensive petroleum jelly, and give that a try first. And then wait for the oils a little bit later. I think that you will find that you have greater success with them if you allow yourself to play with the other ones first. So thank you so much for your questions on all of that. I look forward to seeing more of your creative aspects. Until next time, may you find more color in your day.